So my birthday was last Saturday. Thank you very much. Yes. Yes, okay, it's back there. I turned 55, the double nickel. That wasn't the test. I only mentioned it to say that if anybody wants to get me anything, I'm drinking Lagunitas. So just put your orders in now. I also mentioned it because Saturday was also the birthday of a good friend of mine from high school. We were college roommates. We did shows together. He also would have turned 55 on Saturday, except unfortunately he died on September 11th, 2012, when he and 3 other Americans were killed in Benghazi. My friend was our ambassador to Libya, Chris Stevens. That brought the room down. So my birthday kind of sucks now. It's bittersweet, because I keep getting older, and of course Chris doesn't. Chris was such a better man than I am. He was more patient, he was more tolerant, he was more willing to sacrifice. After college, we went our separate ways. I went off to theater school to do my little plays, and he went off to join the Peace Corps and the Foreign Service. Chris spent most of his career in some of the hottest spots in the greater Middle East: Damascus, Baghdad, Jerusalem, Cairo, Amman, Riyadh, Tripoli. He loved that part of the world. He loved its people. I'm sure he also loved being the only tall blonde guy around for 5 countries. Chris was exactly the kind of person we want representing the United States abroad. He was charming, he was a great listener, and he was funny. He could make jokes in French, English, and Arabic. He did everything with a kind of goofy gusto, whether it was singing The Company Way from How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying, which we did in college, or whether he was sharing coffee with village elders who were wary of Americans, and then he would win their respect. We stayed in touch via letters and emails and beers at Christmas when we were home visiting our families. For 15 years, I closed the majority of my emails to him with some variation of, "Please keep your head down." Still, I didn't really think he was going to die. Why would that happen? That test, the one of being informed and fully aware of the dangers and nuances and complexities of the world in which he traveled, that test I failed. Chris's death and the events of that night have obviously become very politicized, and I briefly became a very minor footnote to that. He died on a Tuesday, and on that Saturday night, late, I got a Facebook message from a guy, a journalist at the Huffington Post, telling me that some right-wing bloggers were claiming that Ambassador Stevens was gay, and that the proof was the pictures I had posted of me and Chris in college on Twitter and Facebook. So Dee and I Googled Chris's and my names, and sure enough, I was being called Chris's college lover and longtime companion, mostly because I had come out and said in an interview that a couple of times in college, I had directed Chris in musicals. Well, there you go, obviously. Plus, the pictures I had posted were of me and Chris at our fraternity's Great Gatsby party, and we were both wearing ascots. The only reason it was just me and Chris in the pictures was that Dee insisted I cut our dates out of the picture. So much for chivalry. Now, for the record, I've got no problem if people think I'm gay. Frankly, my wife and kids think the jury is still out. Look, I work in the theater. If people think I'm gay, I'll work more. In fact, when the kids were little, Dee and I just always assumed that it was a fait accompli that our son would be gay because he has a weak father and a domineering mother. And his father uses words like fait accompli. But I'm not gay, and neither was Chris, although we both would probably be denied service in Indiana, just to be safe. Anyway, when we first heard about these right-wing bloggers, Dee had the perfect response. She said, "Oh, honey, you'd be lucky to have such a handsome blonde boyfriend." But the more she thought about it, the angrier she got. It wasn't fair, and he wasn't here to defend himself, and she wanted me to make a statement. But I didn't want to dignify the rumor with a response. I didn't want to do anything to give the story legs. I didn't respond to the guy from the Huffington Post, and on the following Monday, I talked to my friend Bob Mondella, who was the film critic for All Things Considered on NPR. He had seen the rumors, and I told him that Dee wanted me to say something, and he said, "Don't." Don't. None of the respectable news organizations are picking up this story. Neither is Fox News. So just let it die. And I said, great, fine, good. That confirms my instincts. And then he said, but you know, not for nothing. I've seen the pictures of you and Chris. You were adorable. So I passed that test. I didn't feed the beast. I didn't contribute to the noise, for once. A few months later, Dee and I took our daughter, Daisy, to see the movie Argo. Ben Affleck's movie about the taking of the hostages in Tehran in 1979. Daisy was 12, and she wanted to see Wreck-It Ralph. But this was one of the few chances I had to pick the movie, so I chose. So I had heard that the section that dealt with the actual raid on the embassy was pretty intense, but I thought if I can make it through that, I'll be fine. And I did. I made it through. I really loved the movie. And as the tension of the final airport sequence kept ratcheting up, and my daughter and I grabbed each other, both of us desperate but laughing, because, laughing at the narrow escapes and the close calls is part of the fun of a movie like this. And I whispered to her, oh, God, I'm sorry, honey, we should have seen Wreck-It Ralph. And then finally, as the plane cleared Iranian airspace, and it was clear it was going to be a happy ending, and the theater broke out in cheers, I started sobbing, just out of nowhere, just completely, unexpectedly bawling. And Daisy, bless her, put her arms around me and she said, oh, Daddy, we should have seen Wreck-It Ralph. I realized I was crying for Chris and his 3 colleagues, and I was crying for all the other folks who didn't make it out of situations like that. And I realized Ben Affleck had done this wonderful thing. He'd made this tribute to my friend and to all the American State Department and Foreign Service personnel who represent our interests all over the world, usually armed with nothing more than their wits and a desire to embrace other cultures and do some good. And I realized I passed another kind of test. My daughter can make me laugh.